So we're going to start off just playing with our rules here, substituting in. The main thing that we want to talk about though is the questions that I have on the board, and sorry, I'll put them on Daymap in a minute, is these ones aren't just straight substitution, it is then tweaking them a little bit. Maybe you're given the slope and you're missing one of the values in the coordinates, same thing, you're given the distance, you're missing an x value or a y value and you have to find it. So working backwards, a little bit of algebra, a little bit of rearranging. Obviously, that's easier if you are confident in doing the questions themselves. So, do we recall? You're given 2 points. Kai, you're right? You're given 2 points. It asks you to find the distance. Now, if you're warming up, it's a Friday, first week back, you sort of go, by all means, feel free to label x1, y1, okay? x2, y2, and then it's just to slap into the formula. Now, 3, take 2, make sure that becomes a plus 2, and that's how we get 5 squared. If Tilly decides, I don't want to go 3, take 2, I'm just working from left to right. So minus 2, take 3. What do you get? Minus 5. What's minus 5 squared? You will get the same answer. So remember, that's what we talked about. It doesn't matter, because who made this the boss and said that was the first point? It doesn't matter which one you call point 1, which one you call point 2. Is that okay? Getting down. Now, this is the point where I have to remind you a little bit of something, and those with graphics calculators are going to possibly have an easier time. So imagine we were working out the distance, and instead of it being root 34, thanks boys, instead of it being root 34, it was root 20. Now I pop that into my calculator and boom. If you are using your scientific calculator, it will give you a decimal answer, but your graphics calculators go straight to giving exact. Okay, so scientific, that would do that. Graphic simplifies it. Why hasn't it just stayed as root 20? Do we remember at all? No? Okay, so this is just a little aside. If it goes over your head, just do what I did on the calculator, get the decimal answer, check with the answer at the back of the book, however they've written it, put it in, convert it to a decimal, compare the pair. Agreed? Because I can't remember what the textbook does, how they write their answers, but it's not too bad to simplify a square root, and this is a skill that you're going to have to be using later when we do quadratics, basically any time a square root comes up. So, you have to ask yourself, is there a square number that goes into this? Who remembers what's a square number? Nope, 4 is a square number. What's another square number? 9. 16. 36. Try 49, and so on. So basically, who can come up with a definition? What's our square? What's a square number? Yeah, Matt. Yes, when 2 numbers come together. But again, I could have any 2 numbers. Like I could go 2.5 times 2.5, get something, but that wouldn't be a square number, yeah? Same number times twice. Again, the same number times twice. I don't think it actually does, because I can go 2.5 times 2.5, and yet 6.25 is not a square number. Yep. Yep. So that's what you're going to say? He said when you have a square root in its whole. So when you take the square root of this number, you get what we call an integer. So integer means whole number. All right? So just chucking some words out that pop up in our textbook sometimes that people will talk about. Nothing to be worried about, just tossing it out. So we look, are any of these possible to go into 20?
So one question says like find the integer, just means find the
whole number. Yeah. Or it might even say, a question might say, write it as an integer. So if you have 2.6, write it as an integer, you have to say 3. Or it could say whole number, same deal. Right, so do any of these go into 20? And so we can now write this as, do we all agree it's 4 times 5? And what we're allowed to do is, because there's a times here, we can actually split that and say that's root 4 times root 5. And what is the square root of 4? 2. So we get 2 root 5. Bingo, bango, bob. That's how the calculator gets it. Okay? So if you have a graphics calculator and this happens, that is why. If you go, I can't be stuffed doing any of that, well, that's okay for now. Later in the year, we will have to play with that and simplify, but that's just an FYI for the answers you get. Is that okay? All right. Working from the textbook to save yourself a lot of pain. Write down the coordinates, because what you will find invariably is sometimes you'll get the wrong answer, and it's not that you stuffed up, it's that you accidentally wrote part of G and part of H. Know what I mean? Okay, the next thing to make sure that you're not stuffing around, we write our formula. A good mathematician will always write their formula. The more you write it, the more it just sits in your mind, and so you are saving time. You don't have to always look it up. Boom, it's there. So far, so good? Okay, and then we sub. And this is where you can decide, oh, it's Friday. Am I going to go? And I'm still depressed that Port lost. Right, so am I going to go X1, Y1 and X2, Y2 to help us out? Or are you just going to go back in? Tom, you're going to be in big trouble if you're smirking about Port losing. I will be brutal in my retaliation. Kidding. Kidding. Okay, so away we go. And I can't help myself. Like, I just want to go from left to right, not do X2, take X1. I want to go 1, take 2. But I will follow the herd. So we're going to go -2, take 1, and 3, take 2. Simples? I'll be honest with you here. I would probably go straight to just going, like I skip that step sometimes, and I would go straight to, going to be a little bit naughty here, 3 squared plus 1 squared. Why am I a little bit naughty? What's -2 take 1? -3. So why didn't I put -3 squared? Because then I square it. Yeah. So that's the other thing I wanted to remind you about. You come over here, you enter -3 squared. What's -3 times -3? 9. But when you enter this, you will not get 9. You get -9 because you've entered it in incorrectly. This is saying square 3, then times it by -1. So if you want to square -3, and some of you might be rolling your eyes at me and going, Miss McDonald, we know that. But the number of times that I get students going, I got this wrong, why? Okay, and so that's why I know when I square a negative, I get a positive, so I ignore the negative and I just go, yeah, baby. And last warning, I'll soon be quiet, is if you write this, I don't even want to see you write. I don't want to see you write that. Because again, that represents -9. So if you're going to do it, you must have the brackets. All right? I'm a little bit naughty here, but I can live with that. All right, 9 plus 1, root 10. I'm done here. Simples? There's no square number that goes into 10, so we're done. Check the answers. If it said to 2 decimals, then put it to 2 decimals. If it doesn't say anything, simplest form is fine. I'm going units. Are we good with that? So if we look at the questions I'm asking you to do, I'm saying now let's skip to 2C. And if you're worried about skipping, please don't. Can everybody read 2C to themselves? Okay, so the reason that I'm asking you to just go straight to 2C, anyone know why? So I'm asking you to classify as equilateral, isosceles or scalene. How do we know the difference between Correct, the length of the sides. So in order to determine what these are, you're going to have to work out the length of A to B, A to C, and BC, all three lengths. Correct? If all the lengths are equal, then you will tell me equilateral. What's it going to be for it to be isosceles? Two. Two lengths are the same, one different. And of course, all different. They're missing one triangle. What triangle are they missing? A right angle triangle. So, can an equilateral be right angle? Clearly not. 60, 60, 60. Can an isosceles be? Absolutely it can be, right? Two lengths the same. Angles would be 45, 45. Scalene, obviously, yes. So how can I check if my isosceles or scalene is also a right angle triangle? Lengths, right angle triangle. Which formula? Lengths, right angle triangle. So you can't hear them, but they're always doing this. It's that one with the rule. It's that one with the a squared plus b squared. And I'm really saddened that you can't tell me the name of it. Say it loud. Wait, I'm coming over to you. What is it?
Pythagoras theorem.
Yes, people on the video at home are probably yelling it out to the screen, I hope. Pythagoras. So you will go one length squared plus another length squared. Does it equal the third length squared? How do you know which one it's meant to equal squared? The longest. That's your hypotenuse. That's your c squared. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if you are feeling, oh no, I don't remember my distance and I want more practice, do another one from 1 if you want to, but you're going to do 3 here anyway. Capiche? Go forth. Hoppity skipping on to question 5. Feel free to do earlier questions if you want more practice. But the whole point is, can I use the distance formula when I have all the information? I think we can. And now we're going to work backwards and go, okay, I've got one coordinate. One x value is missing, and you'll find in a minute it could be an x value missing or a y value missing. And they've given you the distance. Now you're going to get to the point where you have mixed up questions, and it might be that you're given the slope and you're missing bits and pieces. So this is where you need to make sure I'm reading the question nicely. As soon as I see so many units apart, I'm thinking distance. So what would a good mathematician do? Write the formula. Excellent. They weren't very good mathematicians. They didn't write the formula. And then, of course, you just sub your information in. Okay? So this is your distance. They've put x2 take x1, right? B take 3, all squared. 1 take 2. That's how they got the 3, all squared. Happy with that, everyone? Please focus, because we're about to do this next. And part of this is now we're handing it over to you a little bit, where you're going to need to make sure sometimes, if we don't cover it in class, you are able to read your mathematics and understand what's going on. And I think a lot of you are at that point at this time. So going from here to here, they've given you the heads up. How do we get rid of a square root? You square both sides, so the square roots disappear. At this point, you have to stop yourself from going, oh, let's get rid of the brackets, expand. Don't do it. What did they do from this step to this step? Good. To get rid of the plus 9, they took 9. Oh, look at that. 4. So now, instead of expanding, to get rid of the squared, we will? No, not divide, square root. Okay? The opposite of squaring is square rooting. 4 square rooted is 2. And you might go, well, hang on, isn't that the same as dividing by 2? Well, no, because if that was a 9, what's the square root of 9? Yeah, 3, not 4.5. So square rooting is not dividing by 2. Why is there a plus or minus there? Why? So he said square root can be plus or minus. Why?
Because negative number in square root is positive.
No. I get what you mean though. So if I go 2, so what times itself gives me 4? So 2 times 2 gives me 4. But what's negative 2 times negative 2? 4, because a negative times a negative is a positive. What's the square root of negative 4? Either 2 or negative 2. Neither. Can't be. So if it's negative 2, what's a negative 2 times negative 2? Yeah, positive. If you then say, well, it's negative 2 times positive 2, well, they're not the same, so it's not a square number. You cannot take the square root of a negative answer. Okay? So if you ever get to the point where you have to square root a minus answer, impossible, can't be done. It's either cannot be done or you've done a whoopsie. And now, to get rid of a take 3, you add 3. Yeah? And we'll go through and we'll do one now and we'll show you why exactly there are 2 solutions. So put number 5, pop your question down, sub in, let's go. Yes, this is all under the distance thing, but remember they could all be mixed up. So as we would be reading it, we're going da da da, we see 4 units apart. That's why, ding ding ding, we're going to write down our distance formula. Okay? I've underlined 4 units, so that's telling me that the distance is actually 4. Everything underneath each other. Nice and neat. It says square root, I write square root. And then we've got x2 take x1, y2 take y1. Now, you can by all means do that. I always like to start with my letter anyway, so it works out well. A take 2, all squared. If you don't want to write x1, y1, sometimes you can just make sure you're underlining the ones that go together. Because if I had $1 for every time I've had students go, oh yeah, it's just 2 take 3. They're right next to each other. Let's just take them. Off in Italy, would I be? I would. Okay, plus, what will be in my next bracket? -1, -3. You are all entitled to write -1 take 3. If some of you want to write -4, do it. Happy with that? And now we go, ooh, this is a bit ugly. It's really hard to solve this with that square root there. So let's get rid of it. What did the example say to do to get rid of a square root? Square. Square both sides. So when I square the right-hand side, the square root disappears. So I'm just going to tidy this up. -1 take 3 is -4 squared. What is -4 squared? 16. I squared the right-hand side. I have to square the left-hand side. What's 4 squared? 16. Digest that. Aim of the game. Let's get to A. Again, we're resisting the temptation to expand a bracket at this point in time. It would work, but you have to do some higher level math stuff, which we don't know quite yet. So I'm going to get rid of this +16. How do I get rid of +16? Take 16 and 16 take 16. They cancel out. So I've got 0 equals A minus 2 squared. How do I get rid of a squared? Square root. In this case, how do I square root the 0? Oh, well, that's just 0. So I get 0 equals A take 2. Therefore, A must be 2. So we just said it has to be neat. I'll ask you to rewrite it if it's not. So again, I read the question, Ryan. We read the question because it said 5 units apart. Okay, that's why I go to write down the distance. If it said the midpoint of such and such, then I'd probably write down the midpoint formula. If it said the gradient is, then I'd write down the slope/gradient formula. Yes? Oh, sorry. Thank you. I always go 1, 2, 1, 2. Doesn't matter. But anyway, in this case, was that what people were pointing out? Thank you so much. All right, got our formula, and now we sub. So, do we know the distance? Do we? Do we know? Yes. So we put that underneath. Square root, and away we go. We're just substituting in x2 take x1. So it's going to be A take 1. I'm hoping we don't write take 1 anymore. We would just say, well, that's A plus 1, all squared. So if you still did it, that's okay, you're warming up, but you were allowed to. Did you do it because it helps you or because...
That's just how I would do it.
Okay, if that works for you, feel free. I think the more that you do, you might actually get to the point where you go, "Ugh, take, it's just plus." But feel free, it's not wrong. And then -2, take 1 again. I know my subtraction, so I'm going to say -2 take 1 is -3. If you think, oh geez, I make silly mistakes, then please write -2 take 1. Your call. We want to get rid of the square root by squaring. Excellent, excellent. So we're going to square both sides. So 5 squared is 25. We square the right hand side so that square root disappears. I'm left with a plus 1 squared plus 9. Yeah? Who would like to tell me next? I'll wait because I know you copied. So I'm hearing a lot of the rumblings coming out there, and I hope that's not bursting other people's bubbles. They knew too, to get rid of the plus 9. We will take 9. What are we rocking? The ouch. That's right. Now, would you like me to write 25 take 9, or shall I write 16? Your call. 16. Now, that's because the first people said 16. If you didn't want that, by all means, you write 25 take 9, because this is your bookwork. And remember, when you might have to revise this or do a assignment worksheet in a couple of next week or something, you might forget this. So you want to be able to go back, read your examples and know what you did. Okay, nearly there. We're not going to expand. We want to get rid of the squared, so we square root. What is the square root of 16? Not just 4. Correct. So we're going to do this. We're going to say plus or minus. I'm going to write this just because it's our first example, I guess. So this is the symbol for plus or minus. That means, what is the square root of 16? It could be plus or minus 4. So it is a shortcut for saying, I've got 2 solutions here. It could be 4 equals a plus 1, or it could be -4 equals a plus 1. Huzzah? So therefore, get rid of the plus 1, take 1. A is 3, or get rid of the plus 1, take 1. A is -5. I'm going to give you a test question right here, right now. Guaranteed test question. Explain why there are 2 solutions. And you cannot tell me, because the square root gives you 2 answers. Why? Graphically. Why graphically are there 2 solutions for this? So I want you to think about what's going on, and we're going to draw this diagram. 1 minus 1. Okay, so we've got, oh, come on, boy. Not doing very nice. So 1 minus 1, so that was, nope, -1, 1 was P, do we agree?
Yeah.
Q was A minus 2. So Q, it could be 1 minus 2, it could be 3 minus 2, it could be -1 minus 2, it could be, it's somewhere along this line is Q. Would you agree? Because it's something minus 2. But we're saying it has to be 5 units long. So imagine I've got 5 units going this way, but I could also have 5 units going that way. 5, 5, 2 solutions. Yeah? How come for part A I only got 1 solution? When it would have been the shortest length. You get 1 solution. Perpendicular. Anyway. But the main reason is why you get 2 solutions. Now, I've done a few of these questions before. It might then be you're finding a y value. What happens if I said it's q is somewhere along here? Well, that would be, it would be 1 something, I don't know, let's call it b. And again, it could be 5 units that way or 5 units that way. So you would always get, sorry, sometimes get 2 solutions because it can go, my legs went this way, my legs went that way. Used to be an ad. Crocodile bit me in the guts. No? Okay. As I said, this is probably the hardest bit of the whole unit and the most algebra of the whole unit, and I'm hoping that it's not that bad. Substitute, see what happens. Now, with C, most people who were originally stuck, once they wrote the formula down, they substituted their information in, it wasn't too bad. So on Tuesday, when I check your books, I will at least see a formula and substitution. If you can go further, excellent. If you cannot, that's okay too. Write yourself a little note for D. A is equidistant from P and Q. What does equidistant mean? Equal distance. So for 5D, your hint is going to be, can you work out the distance from A to P? Get an expression. Can you work out the distance from A to Q? Get an expression. So you have square root of blah, 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 blah. Then you have another square root of blah, blah, blah. Agreed? Because they are equidistant, what do those blah, blah, blahs have to be? Equal. So you should end up with the square root of bloody blah equals the square root of bloody blah. How do we get rid of the square roots? Square, and they'll basically cancel each other. And then see what happens. So write yourselves a hint in your book. Work out AP. It has to equal AQ. Now again, if you can't get further, that's all right. We will go through them on Tuesday. No problem. You cannot just down tools, because remember our schedule, it is going forthwith. Is everybody comfortable that to find the midpoint, you would just go to get your x value, 8 plus 2, 10 divided by 2, 5. That's your x value. What's your y value? 1 plus 5, 6 divided by 2, 3. So 5, 3, bang. If you wish to go and do some, please hit it. Can I borrow your minds to have a look at what I'm asking you to do is number 2. I know I harp on about it today and I'd hate to listen back to this video about write the formula down, sub in your information. How many times I've said that. So again, we read the question, midpoint. So straight away, I run to my formula. I go midpoint equals x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2, and we go, huzzah. Now we go to sub in. Now this is where you need to make sure you have read the question, because this is not, oh, here's 2 points, let's just sub it in to the right-hand side. This one is the midpoint. So if I'm subbing in, where is that going to go? At the start on the left-hand side, my midpoint is indeed 3 minus 1 equals. Now what's happening is I'm missing a coordinate. So the B, don't know what it is. So I'm going to call that just XY. Maybe the book calls it AB. You could call it PQ, star tree, whatever. Unknown, unknown. Agreed? So, to go in here, what would this X value be? Well, it's these two added together divided by 2. Do we agree? Add the X components, divide by 2 gives you the midpoint. So, 6 plus X or X plus 6, I don't care. Divide by 2. 4 plus Y or Y plus 4 divided by 2. Yes? Now what? This point has to equal this point. What is the only value that this whole thing could actually be? 3. It has to equal. Does that make sense? So therefore, x plus 6 over 2, it has to equal 3. What is the only value that this can be if they equal? Correct. Y plus 4 over 2 has to equal minus 1. Is this something that we can easily solve? How do I get rid of divide by 2? Times 2. How do I get rid of the plus 6? Minus 6, so x is 0. Same deal here. How do I get rid of divide by 2? How do I get rid of the plus 4? So therefore my b value will be 0 minus 6. Huzzah. Now some of you can actually look at that and go, well, of course it has to be. But I'm telling you right now, as soon as I chuck fractions in here, you're stuffed. If I have fractions as in instead of this being 6, it's 1/2, well, your calculator can do it. Instead of plus a half, you would just, and so on. So, your homework, work your way through. If you want more practice of actually finding the midpoint, by all means, do a couple of those, but it's just subbing. Can you please? I'll write again, I'll put that what's on the board, the ones you have to do. I've asked you to just do A, C, E. Since I've just done A, maybe you should do B, C, F. Up to you. Make sure that you understand and can do. We? And I've asked you to have a go at question 3. And after that, we're looking at slope. So if you've got lots coming on next week, by all means, get ahead of the game, and we're just going to do the same thing. Find the slope. So we're popping this to find the slope. Then we are given the slope and we are missing a point. Same thing over and over again. But notice nothing as complex as your distance formula. All right? So what would we agree with to get up to? Do midpoint, start slope. Is that okay? See how you go? 40 minutes. Time yourself.